tighten your lines as we get ready to sail the seven seas on the Political Pirate Podcast. Join Captain Ted Yoho and the salty dog John Martin as they search far and wide for the greatest treasure of all, the truth. From local Florida news to nationwide stories and the globe beyond, we've got it all mapped out. Now here's your hosts, the salty dog John Martin and Captain Ted Yoho.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 3 Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast, with yours truly, the old salty dog, John Martin, and the captain of our ship, none other than Ted Yoho. Good morning, Ted. Are you frozen solid or staying warm, or what's going on?
Freshly back from Washington, D.C. for 2 days, and I came back to Willatka, and it was 27 degrees this morning on the St. Johns River. Yes, it is frozen. Good to have it, though. Get rid of the bugs.
It was probably pretty much the same here. It might have even been colder because quite often, inland, we're more inland. We don't get any of that ocean effect or any of that kind of stuff. So it usually is even colder here. I don't know the exact temperature, but there was a lot of frost on the ground, and
frost on the pumpkins.
One thing I can always tell, my dog didn't want to go outside. She's only about 6 pounds, a little toy poodle, and she freezes pretty quick. She didn't.
She'd be an ice cube.
That kind of lets me know where we are with that when she don't want to go out.
No, it is. Yeah, we just hope everybody made it through it all right. The blessings we have here in Florida. It may get cold like that, but it sure warms up pretty quickly.
Yeah, well, the thing about it is a lot of people these days don't even know how to do basic stuff like, drip their pipes if they're outside and stuff like that. I mean, I don't even think about it because I grew up doing it. But, I had all my pipes that are exposed outside dripping. I had my swimming pool running. So there's certain things. I didn't have to shovel any snow out of any driveways or anything. So we are blessed for that.
That is something we never want to do here in Florida. My daughter's down in Fort Lauderdale area, and they had the big iguanas laying on the ground yesterday morning. It was in the 50s. So that's how sensitive those animals are. And, you look at how cold it got last night, and for the rest of this week, it's going to be pretty cold. So, you wonder what the climate change people are, what their excuse is for this, or is this a result of the climate change that we've got such extreme cold?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you mentioned the iguanas, where they call them down there chicken of the trees or something like that. Yeah. One of the things that's funny about that is every time they fall, people think they're dead quite often, and they're not. They're just kind of, in a stasis. They're almost like in a coma. And people will literally pick them up and put them like in the trunk of their car to take them home, and then open their car and surprise, they burst out of there totally alive. People just don't think before they act quite a bit.
I did that with an alligator. Of course, it wasn't during the cold weather. I saw him running across the road. He was about a 3.5, 4 footer, and I caught him. And I was practicing at the time, and I think I can tell the story because it's beyond the statutes of limitations. And I wrapped his mouth up with tape we used on horses, and I took it home and put it in the box for the kids. So when they came home from school, they got to play with it for a little bit. Then we turned it loose.
Yeah, well,
I shouldn't tell that.
Well, I remember too a crazy story down in South Florida. Someone was pissed off at somebody at the drive-through of like a McDonald's or something. I don't know if it might have been a Taco Bell, and they threw a live alligator through the window. So people don't think about it. And really, that's kind of a good segue into to what we're going to talk about here at the first part of the show.
I thought so. That's why I did that.
Oh, I have no doubt. That's why you're a true professional. That's why you're the captain. But
that's right.
Minneapolis. So let's talk a little bit about Minneapolis.
Minneapolis
to be the kind of center now of, and it was before with the George Floyd riots. We'll talk a little bit about that as we go. But now it's kind of like, I wonder, Ted, is this the Fort Sumter or, Sumter that, and people don't know the historical reference. That's where the shots were fired of attack on Fort Sumter in South Carolina, was the opening volleys, if you will, of what became the United States Civil War. And of course, we talked about it in depth. Are we headed for, or are we in some level of civil war now? And I think you can see what's happening in Minneapolis although the parallels aren't exact, there are some, and you could make a case that you've already made many times that we are actually, in fact, in the early stages of a civil war right now.
Yeah, there's so many indicators saying that. I mean, when you get this much of an ideological split in a nation, how do you reconcile that without some kind of violence? And, that's something I don't think any American wants, but there's people on both sides that are unwilling to back up. I for one, am unwilling to back up on the constitutional principles and what this nation stands for as a free constitutional republic. I will not go into Sharia law or changing it into a socialist country like the squad members want to do. And to see these governors of these states like Gavin Newsom, Tim Walz, Pritzker in Illinois, and we can go on Hochul and all these other ones, going against the Constitution of the United States and what America stands for, the antithetical stances that they stand on that are totally different from the founding principles of this country, is against the traditions of this country, and it goes against all the mantra that we've gotten away from. I was talking to a congressman. He was from Texas. He's in his second term, and his kids go to a Catholic school, and the nuns were teaching them how racist America was, and all the things that you hear in DEI programs. And this is in a private Catholic school, so he had to go in there and kind of correct them. But if we don't get away from teaching this in schools, this country will be lost, because it goes with the education that we do our young people. And you can only imagine the kids that in elementary school 15 years from now, they won't know anything about the true history of America.
Except what they learn on Facebook or YouTube.
Yeah, that's a good
like that, which is a bit scary, unless they're watching this show, by the way, too.
That's right. That's what we're here for, education. But
Go ahead.
I was thinking when Ashley Babbitt got shot up, got murdered in D.C. on January 6th of 2021, that might have been the shot at Concord that started the Revolutionary War. And the Insurrection Act, or the what we saw in South Carolina under Andrew Jackson, when they were going to break away from the Union, he brought in the troops. And I know we're probably going to talk about the Insurrection Act, but these are things that have been put in law because of trials and tribulations and lessons learned. So these things are in place. And there's so many things around the world now that we're going back to old laws that, or compacts or agreements, and I know we're going to talk probably a little bit about Greenland. And that was a big discussion when I was up in DC. So I want to turn it back over to you.
Yeah, well, one of the things you're talking about history, and we talk about it a lot because you're very much into it. I am too. I was a history major at the University of Florida. The University of Florida. And it's amazing to me how few people really know the basic history of the United States. And this particular detail I'm about to reveal, I don't expect a lot of people to know it, but it's really interesting because one of the things, they say if you don't know history, you're doomed to repeat it. That's a kind of famous saying. Well, I hear these statements from political leaders and all that, this is the first time, we have an occupying force, in a city like Minneapolis, like they're federal troops, which they're not, but using that first time we've ever seen that and everything else. And that's just whether you agree with it or not, as far as the using it, it's nowhere near the first time. And it's not even the most dramatic times. There was an incident, and it really doesn't even have an official title. You'd have to look it up. But if you do Abraham Lincoln and liquor wars or something like that in Brooklyn, put all that together, you'll come up with this. A lot of people don't know this, but really one of the first acts of the Civil War, to a certain extent, wasn't actually Fort Sumter. It was pretty much inevitable that we were going to have a civil war, and the Union needed money, obviously, to fight a war, and so they put a big tax on liquor and stuff like that. Right. And there was a lot of bootlegging going on in Brooklyn. Everybody thinks about the South, but Brooklyn, which was a total conclave of Irish. It was the Irish people basically were the vast majority in Brooklyn. Well, they were doing a lot of bootlegging there, and so they didn't want to pay the tax, which is an ancient story between
Yeah,
bootleggers and
really.
all that. But Lincoln sent federal troops, armed federal troops, into Brooklyn, and they actually had physical, violent skirmishes. People were killed, people were arrested, all of that stuff. The whole city basically was attacking the Union troops with whatever they had. It might have been a pick and shovel or axe or whatever. And no one seems to ever talk about that, but that was kind of the first real skirmish between American citizens and Union troops at the time of the Civil War. Now, there were some before that and some certainly after that,
Sure.
but it's not unprecedented by any stretch.
Oh, absolutely not. And we won't have to worry about it in New York because they've elected a Muslim mayor and they shun alcohol. So we won't have to worry about it there. But going back, it really started with George Washington. He set the precedent for it in September of 1794 with the Whiskey Rebellion. Here, history repeats itself. That was in 1794. And that set the groundwork to come up with the Insurrection Act. I think that was passed in 1808. John Adams also used something similar to that in 1790, but it's been used 30 times since the beginning of this country. And I'll throw George Washington in there as one of those times because it wasn't a law then, but it came into effect shortly after that. And, you got to go back to when these things happened, there was big public unrest, but it was usually a local incident. The Rodney King thing out in LA that led to those riots. That was a terrible thing. I mean, that definitely was police brutality on steroids, but that led to George H.W. Bush calling in the National Guard at the request of the governor at the time. And so it was an isolated incident like that where the governors were asking for the help. George Wallace was different. He didn't want the federal troops in there. But today we have all these governors and they have these sanctuary city policies, and it pits them against the constitutional law that the federal government has authority. And so this is where it's so much different because you have elected representatives of a state usurping federal law and just excluding it so it doesn't apply here because we're in charge of these states. And that was what led Andrew Jackson almost to crack down on South Carolina, to supersede what South Carolina wanted to do. And that really could have started a civil war. And that was in 1829, 1830, somewhere around there. And it took to the Civil War under Lincoln. As you said, with the Whiskey Rebellion, those things are fomenting and they build up, and then you have the Civil War. And so you see history is repeating itself here again.
Absolutely. Well, that kind of leads us, because you're always good at that, Ted, into this video I want to play. This is Governor Tim Walz, Tampon Tim, just this past week, actually talking about occupation of Minneapolis, which are words that were used during like the Civil War and other wars. And I want people to really listen to what he says here, because he truly is fanning the flames more than Donald Trump has ever done, in my opinion. And the language that he is using and what he is saying is literally, in a way, a prelude to basically calling for civil war. So let's listen to Mr. Walz, and then we'll come back and talk about it, Ted.
Donald Trump and Kristi Noem, end this occupation. You've done enough. What's happening in Minnesota right now defies belief. News reports simply don't do justice to the level of chaos and disruption and trauma the federal government is raining down upon our communities. 2,000 to 3,000 armed agents of the federal government have been deployed to Minnesota. Armed, masked, undertrained ICE agents are going door to door, ordering people to point out where their neighbors of color live. They're pulling over people indiscriminately, including U.S. citizens, and demanding to see their papers. And at grocery stores, at bus stops, even at our schools, they're breaking windows, dragging pregnant women down the street, just plain grabbing Minnesotans and shoving them into unmarked vans. kidnapping innocent people with no warning and no due process. Let's be very, very clear. This long ago stopped being a matter of immigration enforcement. Instead, it's a campaign of organized brutality.
I mean, there you have the chicken hawk. I would kind of call Tim Walz, if you know what I'm talking about there.
Yeah,
He
really.
wouldn't fight, but calling really for war in the street. He keeps talking about an occupying force, an occupation, and all of that, Ted. And that is very specific, deliberate language. How did we get here, Ted? Go ahead, comment on what Mr. Walz said.
Well, I think it's a lot of it, John. It goes back to education, and it's allowing this liberal DEI wokeism, which, it came under a title in the last administration where it really went on steroids, but it has been brewing for years. And Minnesota's been a liberal enclave. I've had several aunts that they just passed away not too long ago, but they're just very hardcore liberals. And so they think this is okay, but it goes really against the standards of what America stood for. And for Tim Walz, number one, he's a very unqualified person to be a governor of a state. He is very ineffective, and he should not be in government. He should be out, and thank God he's pulled out of that race. But I fear who's going to come in behind him. Hopefully somebody like a Tom Emmer, who's running the NRCC now. He is a hardcore federalist, I'll say, and he would do what's right for the state of Minnesota, and they definitely need a change. And of course, my pillow guy, he's running. Oh shoot, I lost his name. Will come back.
Lindell.
Mike Lindell. Yeah, super nice guy. I've had the opportunity to talk to him, and so they need a change. And we got here because we have not kept our eye on the ball of what the country is. It goes back to the basics, John. Education, educating, getting people activated. And it was interesting. I had a young man call me from Maryland, high school student, 10th grade, and he wanted to meet me. He liked my politics, and he met with some other super conservative people. And I did my background check on him, and I met him up in D.C. this last trip. We took him through the Library of Congress, and his parents were with him. And I asked him, why are you so heavily involved in politics? He goes, I just want to learn more, and I want to get active in this. And I says, you're doing the right things to become educated and activated, or you're motivated. And I says, we need people like you to lead the next generations. So it made me feel good that there's people out there. This young gentleman, he showed up in a suit and tie. His parents were well dressed, and they drove for an hour and a half to get up there, an hour to find a parking spot. And those are the kind of Americans that are growing up that we can hand the baton off because they'll do well. They didn't do that in Minnesota.
That's very heartening news there. I love hearing that story like that. But and you kind of alluded to it with the sanctuary city thing, because what really frustrates me is how the reporting is, certainly on any kind of leftist stuff, which about 90% of it is, where they talk about, and you hear the mayor of Minneapolis saying the same thing. Well, why don't they just cooperate with us? And why are they this occupying force? As Walz says, it's because you're a sanctuary city. And what really gets me is when they talk about, Trump said he was going to go after the worst of the worst first and all that. And they're catching up other people. Well, that part of that could be true. But the problem is, Ted, that the worst of the worst, places like Minneapolis and Minnesota, they have these people in custody at some point quite often, and they simply release them back on the street, sometimes intentionally. We had one judge that helped one of them get out of a courtroom, all of that kind of stuff, where ICE would much rather prefer to literally go to the detention center, where the local county jail, whatever, state prison, take these people into custody and process them, deport them. They don't want to go beating down a door or whatever, but they have an obligation to get them. And if they get other people that are here illegally, they can't just pick and choose, but they want to focus on the worst of the worst, but they really are being hampered by these people that won't allow them to do it.
You're absolutely right. And when you have local and state officials coming out and running sanctuary cities, this is what you're going to get. When you had the influx, the invasion, the illegal immigrant invasion under the last 4 years of Harris and Biden, and I am just so thankful that Trump won. I'll take the bombastic style he has, because we had an invasion in this country that was, I mean, it was destroying this country. And for these state and local officials in Minnesota and other sanctuary states like the ones we already mentioned, for them to release these people that go out and commit crimes, they need to be held accountable for that. They're the ones that should be going to jail. They should be the ones that, do the retribution and the paybacks to the victims, because they are the ones that allowed this. And the whole organization behind that, the Soroses and the anti-American people, and it could be foreign money coming in to do that. Their whole goal is to destroy this country. And I look at back in 1871, President Grant signed a law. It was the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871, and they deemed them a terrorist group of the United States, domestic terror, and so they went after them. Antifa, like Trump said, is a domestic terror group, and they need to go after them. And those people are all along. And I know you're going to play that video of the up in New York about shoot the cops or kill the cops.
Yeah.
And I want people, when that runs, I don't know when it comes up, but I want you to hear how organized the chanting is. It's like they went to rehearsal, for several hours or a day before to have that down. That just doesn't happen spontaneously.
Yeah, well, the latest example of what we were just talking about, the sanctuary cities and cooperation, was the latest shooting, if you in by an ICE agent and wounding a guy. There was a guy a couple of days ago. He was wanted. He had an arrest warrant
Right.
for his, and the thing is, he'd already been arrested. He'd already been processed by the local court system and all that, and they simply released this guy. He's one of these Venezuelan gang members. They found him. They tried to stop his car. He took off. They went after him, and then he got out and ran, as far as I know. This, at least the details I'm hearing. And the ICE officer, why he was alone, I don't know, but maybe he was the fastest. But he started running after the guy. He got him, and when he got the dude, he was resisting arrest. Two other gang members came out of the apartment where he was, and they attacked this officer with a snow shovel, a broom, and other things, and were beating this guy, this ICE officer. He took his pistol out. I'm sure they were trying to get that too, and shot this guy this in the leg, right? And they ended up, he's okay. Everybody's okay. No, but they arrested these people. And the thing is, the protesters came to that area, the organized protesters, and started protesting. They're protesting a person who is a convicted felon, who was supposed to be deported, who was in custody, released. The whole incident is the fault of sanctuary cities, not ICE, period.
That in our education system, John, because if people come out to protest for the illegal criminal, something's wrong in America. I mean, these people, they're wired wrong. And, I don't know how you can avoid a civil war with people like that in this country. To think that the illegal criminal who was already convicted and turned loose has more rights, and we should have more protection for them than the victim, the American citizen that was a victim and his family. This is where the thinking is way wrong on these people that think this way, and if they're not willing to change, and I know you've seen all the ugly videos out there where you see people of that mindset said they want to call violence to it. Heck, we just had that news clip last week with Jasmine Crockett, and the newscaster say it's time to pick up weapons. And I can't get over that. Brittany Cooper from Rutgers University. It's time we start taking out white folks. I mean, that's the mindset that's been brewing since the 50s and 60s with this whole not establishment, but they call it the old white guard. They have been resenting where this country came from. And, it's coming to a head. It's coming to a head, and we'll see what happens.
Well, it's interesting you should mention about white folks there, because Joy Reid, who has no joy that I found, she said on her a recent podcast that that Renee Good, who was the woman that was
Right,
killed by the ICE agent when she rammed him with his car, she said that Renee Good is the George Floyd for white
right,
people. And
right.
so it's just interesting how they use that. And it's always curious to me now how they put these, most of them, I hate to say it, I'm just calling it like I see it, I'm not opposed to it, lesbian women, white women, liberal women, out in front when they know that they're going to be put in harm's way. I don't know if the people doing it, like Ms. Good, really totally understand what they're being asked to do, but let's assume they are. But they're being used. You see these guys like the Antifa and other paid people. They come in after the fact, kind of thing, in
Right.
mass. You don't see them individually out there like this. They wait and they let the people like this Ms. Good start it. So people like her are in a way being used, and I don't know if they really totally understand that, Ted.
I wonder if they'll have statues for them. And it's too bad that Nancy Pelosi and Steny Hoyer aren't going to be around long, because they could wear uh, white scarves for this lady. And I don't want to make light of her dying. And
Me
nobody
neither.
should
I'm
have to
not.
do that. But it's just we're just off base here. It's almost like a sitcom where it's like, how much more screwed up can it be? But it's reality. It's really what's going on in this country, and it's we need to all pull away from that. Tim Walz did say something that you know that everybody should listen to. Stay away. Just stay away. Don't get involved in this. And but he was meaning it for another reason, because they keep wanting to have the sanctuary policies. We had that sanctuary. We had a female sheriff in Alachua County that was abiding by the sanctuary city policy. She is a constitutional officer. She is supposed to uphold the Constitution of the state of Florida and the United States of America. And I called her and says, "Are you going to uphold the federal law on immigration?" "Well, I can't, because we're a sanctuary city." And so we had some words over that. And I lost all respect for her, because she would put the sanctuary city policy of Alachua County and Gainesville over what was best for the nation.
Yeah, a lot of times what happens, you'll see these people, I don't know if they necessarily believe what they're doing or not, but the politics of it, they're worried about, losing support and stuff like that. I don't know if that was the case in this, but we're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we get back, I'm going to play a video that shows you just the level of hypocrisy in the media. I mean, it's cut
Oh, yeah.
and dried. And we'll come back and play that. We'll be
They
right back.
really are. Yeah.
On April 7th, 2025, Gator Nation reached the mountaintop as Florida won the national championship in basketball. Now, relive every thrilling moment with Franz Beard's new book, The Golden Season, the unforgettable story behind Florida's historic 2025 title run. Feel the passion, the drama, and the glory all over again. Available now at Spurriers.com. Click the shop tab. That's Spurriers.com.
Well, there you saw one of our sponsors there. There's a book written by kind of a famous sports person, especially in our area, but really nationwide, Franz Beard. I haven't had the opportunity to read it, but I would encourage people to read it, because I have read a lot of what Mr. Beard puts
Absolutely.
out, and he is a very interesting guy, super knowledgeable, and we're very pleased to have him on board. So check it out.
We thank you.
Well, Ted, when we went to break, I made the people a promise, and I'm going to keep my promises. I want to play this video. Now, this is a CNN reporter. I want to set this up. She's doing a ride along with ICE. And this is not like this recent. This was back during the Obama administration in 2016. And she's actually in Chicago, but ICE agents are doing what they're supposed to do. They're enforcing our immigration laws. But I want you to try to hear what she's saying to these ICE officers and what they do, and we'll come back and talk about it. Check it out.
in Chicago.
TAC 1, guys.
An immigration and customs enforcement team gears up for another long day, pursuing undocumented immigrants who have been convicted of crimes in the U.S. ICE agents mistakenly arrest the target's brother.
In the process of talking to him in the vehicle, he then said, "Oh, no, I'm actually so-and-so. Who you're looking for is over here, this other address." He led us to that address, and we were able to actually arrest the individual.
Do you have evidence, right, that he's using a fake identity, or?
That is correct. We believe he's been using a U.S. citizen's identity to live and work. He has an Illinois driver's license. Third target, he has unauthorized use of a weapon, which was a firearm. He has a couple DUIs. He is a criminal. He has extensive criminal history. And by taking him out of the community, it's making the community safer. And that's ICE's purpose, is to focus on criminals and community safety by taking these recidivist criminals out of our communities.
Of 2016 in Chicago, you have this. I hope everybody, I'd encourage people to watch the whole video. It's about 8 minutes long, but there you have a CNN reporter, Ted, going undercover for a ride along with ICE agents doing their job. And the one thing that really sticks out to me is that they arrest a guy who was the wrong guy, an American citizen, the wrong dude, which can happen. I'm not being critical of it. It happens. But the reporter's response to that is basically, well, stuff happens. You know, it's no big deal. There were no riots in the streets, none of that stuff. They were able to apprehend this guy because they had cooperation from local law enforcement and all of that kind of stuff. This is how it could and should be done, but the only ones preventing that being done is not Donald Trump. They got better things to do than put 2,000 ICE agents in Minneapolis. They could put probably a dozen in there and do the same job if they had cooperation, Ted.
I tell you, it's changed so much. That was 2016. All right. So you've got CNN, a liberal news organization, riding along with ICE. ICE is doing their job. They arrest the wrong person, and they make amends for that, or amends for that. And the CNN reporter thinks, oh, okay, these things happen. So it was okay to do it then with Barack Obama as a president, Democrat president, and they're going in enforcing federal law. It's okay. What has happened to America in that 10-year period of time? What has happened to change that vitriol of politics to where it was okay then to do the very thing they are doing now? The difference that I see is the influx, the invasion of millions of people, and the left rallying around the people of color, picking these minority groups and coalescing those groups into a larger mass. Now you've got the support on the liberal left going against the status quo of the country, trying to tear it down. And now they're doing the opposite with Trump. They're telling how bad he is, but it was okay 10 years ago. That's how much America's changed. And this goes back to the fundamental transformation that Barack Obama talked about before he got into office. These are the fundamental transformations. And think how quick this happened. And if we don't turn the tide, how much more is it going to change in 5 years?
Absolutely. Well, my kind of question too is, where is this going? Where is this all taking us, and why? And I think all of this is clearly being orchestrated, Ted. Not every single piece of it, but these are paid people. If you don't believe that these it's interesting. They put these white liberal women out there up front. An incident happens, and then they have these guys that are dressed. I mean, that stuff's not cheap. They're not wearing homemade riot gear. This is stuff, and they're very coordinated, activated,
very
and
coordinated.
They can go to a place in a moment's notice, all that kind of stuff. It's totally being orchestrated. And this, I want to play you a series of videos here that kind of prove my point, that it's not only orchestrated, but who is behind the scenes. You mentioned like George Soros and all that, and clearly they're the money people. But make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to prove it to you here in just a moment, that the upper echelon of the Democratic Party, the leaders of the Democratic Party, are all in on this. I'm not saying all Democrats. I'm saying the leadership of it is all in on that, Ted.
And
Go
it's
ahead
the
and then we'll
people
play the video.
controlling. It's the people controlling the Democratic Party. You've got a lot of outside groups there, and you got to keep in mind what China's goal is. China's goal is to take over the world, and so they're going to infiltrate everything they can in America. Every American has been hacked by China in your emails. That's a fact, and they're going to throw dissent wherever they can create it, and you get these liberal people that just play into it. So they're puppets for people wanting to destroy this country. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's not a problem. So I want to play this first video. Some of these are a little older, some of them are fresher. This is Nancy Pelosi, and this was when she's talking about violence that was happening during the George Floyd, the 2020 election and all that. And what I really want you to focus in on is, she's a smart lady, obviously. And where she's basically talking about, I don't know how this violence is even happening. And she knows exactly what's happening.
And it's not acceptable.
Yeah. So let's play this and we'll check it and we'll come back and talk about it.
What it is, it's absolutely outrageous. Obviously, it cannot continue. But the fact is that there is an attitude of lawlessness in our country that springs from I don't know where. Maybe you do. And we cannot have that lawlessness become the norm. And these people they coordinate with each other, and they plan traffic patterns and the rest so that they can reach their goal and depart very quickly. And some of it is, again, high-level stores, as the retailers have told us, and some of it is your local.
And she's so bewildered, Ted.
Walgreens.
Where does this violence come from? Where can it possibly come from? The lawlessness, where does it come from? Really?
I have no clue where it comes from. I can't see anything. You talk about somebody that foments it, creates it. And again, the Democrats created this problem. They have created this influx, and they're like, where did that come from? Jiminy crickets. How'd that happen?
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like a scene out of Wizard of Oz where don't pay any attention to the man behind the curtain, all that kind of stuff. And I said this while we were watching this video together, but Nancy Pelosi, I got to give her credit in this sense. And people need to understand what I'm saying. She has got to be, and I don't mean this in a positive, one of the most gifted politicians we've ever had. As far as she's cunning, she's calculating, she's 3 or 4 steps or whatever ahead of most people. Even today in her old age, she still shows. That's why she's a multimillionaire too. But she really has got some skills. And I'm not saying they're good for the American people, but they've been real good for her.
Yeah. And I have to throw in there, she's a very dangerous politician because she's going to go whatever keeps power into the Democratic Party. And it goes back to the guy that was one of their strategists. We don't care if it's right or wrong. We just want to win so we can have the power. And that's what they want. They don't care about the end. But what they don't realize, and this is in that book we talked about on Monday, The Two Swords of Christ, where these liberal progressives, the transgender movements, the gay pride and all that were protesting for Palestinian in this country to get them in power. And when they did, they banned all the gay activity. And so that's what's going to happen to the progressive class, like the Nancy Pelosi's and Gavin Newsom. Wait till you get that group in power, and you're going to be the first ones they go after. And I think she realizes that.
Yeah, it goes back to like the Russian Revolution days when Trotsky was the first. He was the first guy they shot, and he was like
exactly
the kind of spirit of the whole movement there, and they killed him pretty quick.
Take the head of the snake, yeah.
Yeah. So one of the questions that I've had is this violence, this orchestrated violence? Is it a winning strategy for the Democrats? Because they believe it is leading up to the 2016, the 2026 midterms, I guess we could call it.
Right.
And if you ever wonder, is it a winning strategy? I don't know if it will be this time, but it was in 2020 because I want to play this video, and this person is not a gifted politician. She's a useful idiot tool. But this is Kamala Harris when she was the nominee for vice president leading up to their win. We're not getting into the election results. The facts are they were president. That's all that matters at this point.
Yeah.
But Kamala Harris said specifically about the violence and what should happen. Check this out.
I know that there are protests still happening in major cities across the United States. I'm just not seeing the reporting on it that I had
that's right.
for the first few weeks.
That's right. But they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop. And they're not, this is a movement. I'm telling you, they're not going to stop. And everyone beware, because they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day. And that should be, everyone should take note of that on both levels, that they're not going to let up, and they should not. And we should not.
Senator, we have to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll have more with Senator Harris and ask if she has any interest in being a vice presidential candidate.
Ted, there is Kamala Harris, and this is when she was the vice presidential candidate with Biden. If you wonder whether all that violence that was happening there during that period of time was not only orchestrated, but turned out to a certain extent for other factors as well to be a winning strategy. And the key thing, Ted, and you mentioned it while we were watching it, she said this violence shouldn't end, is not going to end, implying even if they're successful to get reelected or get elected in the first place, that the violence should continue, which curiously it did not after they got elected.
Yeah, now it kind of went away because they saw through that. That's not the way to do that. We need to come together and see people like her and the Pelosi's and the Tim Waltzes, they're dividing America over a political ideology. That's going to destroy this nation. You need to find those things that bring us together as Americans. And I talked about this when I was up in DC. I had 2 events I was able to speak at. And I says, our policies should be American policies, because if they're not, we get politicized and they tear us apart. We need to have those policies that bring us together in numbers, and it makes us stronger. And, people like Kamala Harris, they're political hacks. Nancy Pelosi, political hack. All they want is power, to be in power for their own benefit. It's not for the benefit of this country. If they believe in what this country stands for, they wouldn't be doing that. The scary thing, John, is there's enough uneducated people in what this country is founded on that support people like her, like Madami, AOC, Tlaib. They're voting for the wrong. They're voting to put the wrong people in because they're not educated. And if you bring in like the Somalian community, or if you got 11, 12, 15 million people that invaded our country under Biden, they do not assimilate. They do not have time to assimilate. So you become tribal in nature, and the left and the people controlling the left take that and use that to their advantage to cause more dissent in this country. And this can only go on so long where enough people will say, we've had enough.
Well, when you were saying, I think about our kind of slogan about educated, motivated, and activated. There is a dangerous part of that. If you leave the first part out, the educated, and you're simply motivated and activated, that can be dangerous, because we see
it will be.
They're very motivated and very activated. They're not very educated.
Right, and it'll be ready, shoot, aim. That's kind of what they do, and it's just. We've got to stay steady keel. We got to know where we're going as a nation. We got to have leaders that can articulate that and take us there. If not, you're going to get these ignorant people and unqualified people like Tim Walz and Kamala Harris, Madami, who's going to lead this nation astray. Again, why people like that get elected is only because we have the system we have. But if we don't educate people, we're going to lose that system. I stressed that to that young fellow that came up to see me up in DC. Cherish our founding principles and our core values. Those are what needs to be protected. And I felt really good about him, because he's active in his political classes in that area up in Maryland.
Well, I hope he's watching our show and shares it with his friends. But when we were talking about Kamala, popped in my head a little bit. I don't know if people saw this. It didn't make a whole lot of news, but Kamala just bought and moved into an $8 million mansion in California just this week. I don't know if she's going to open up a daycare there, or what, because maybe that's how they afforded it. But
sounds like she's on her way to be a billionaire.
Yeah, she's got a lot of leering. She's had a lot of leering.
A lot of leering.
Not much learning, but she had a lot of leering. But people, I'm always wondering, Ted, aloud, where are we going? What's going to be the ramifications of this? I want to play this video right now. This was from back during the George Floyd riots. It's actually in New York City. If you want to know where all of this is leading, listen to these voices that are very organized and they're very loud and clear. Play it. We'll come back and talk about it. What do we want? Dead cops. When do we want them? Now. And they're in unison there, Ted. I mean, I got to imagine how you feel about this, but I'll let you tell us.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine teaching people that? That's not spontaneous. That is very organized, very damning, very damaging, and they should. I mean, that's promoting violence. I mean, that's fomenting violence, and there is no room for that in the United States of America.
Well, I tell you who I really feel sorry for, the people, because in all these neighborhoods, some of them better than others, whatever, there's always a lot of really good people, even in the worst neighborhoods.
Sure.
And who are having to put up with some of this crap that's going on in this case in Minneapolis and some other places. I really feel for those. I don't feel too much sorry for the thugs. I certainly feel sorry for the law enforcement people that have to, that signed up to serve and have to put up with all this nonsense. But it's probably going to get worse before it gets better, if anything did.
Yeah. And if you look back over the history, who are the presidents that called the Insurrection Act? I mean, you got some Republicans, but you've got Woodrow Wilson, Herbert Hoover, Roosevelt, Lyndon Johnson, John Kennedy. And so, you've got presidents on both sides that called it in for a reason, and these were threats against the nation. And you've got these governors, I just don't understand. Of course, George Wallace, and we know that was all over the immigration and the segregation. And he took a strong stance on that. And, I think he was on the wrong side of history, no doubt. And the federal government came out against him, as they should have. So let's hope we get through this peacefully and we move on and really start focusing on what we can.
Absolutely. Well, one thing that doesn't give me as much hope is I titled it, Idiocracy is Real. And if you haven't heard that term, there's a movie out I'd recommend. We're not going to talk too much about that, but there's a movie called Idiocracy. It is absolutely hilarious and frightening at the same time. But if you know, you know. But idiocracy is real. This planet and this country is in the middle of the first levels, if not in the middle of idiocracy. And I proved this by this. The SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States, is proving it right now. They're literally debating on what is a man and a woman. Not about.
Can you believe this?
What is sex and that kind of thing? The women playing or the men playing women's sports, all of that. It just shows it. How the heck did we get to this point, Ted?
Getting away from the basics and allowing not liberal, but corrupt ideology coming in that should have been squashed at the very beginning. The teachers teaching this. It was, like I said, the Catholic school in Texas teaching these kids how bad America was. Those programs need to be corrected. America's not a perfect country. Yeah, we've had a lot of bad things that have happened and this government's been in charge of, but yet you got to look at the overall system. And the quality of life and the liberties and freedoms we have that is unparalleled around the world. And so how do we get here? By not paying attention.
Yeah, and the craziest thing to me is it's not anti-gay or whatever. We've had gay people have existed since the dawn of time, okay? But I don't ever remember in history a real debate about what is a woman and what is a man. It's really pretty clear. But, I want to play a couple of videos back to back here that really kind of showed us. So, Ketanji Brown, who is now a Supreme Court justice who was brought in under Biden. This is when her confirmation hearings. So no one should be surprised that she's struggling with this question, because look what Marsha Blackburn, senator from Tennessee, asked her the simplest of questions during her confirmation hearing. We'll come back and talk about it.
You provide a definition for the word woman.
Can I provide a definition?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah.
I can't.
You can't?
Not in this context.
So
I'm not a biologist.
The meaning of the word woman is so unclear and controversial that you can't give me a definition?
Senator, in my work as a judge, what I do is I address disputes. If there's a dispute about a definition, people make arguments, and I look at the law and I decide.
Well,
so I'm not.
The fact that you can't give me a straight answer about something as fundamental as what a woman is underscores the dangers of the kind of progressive education that we are hearing about.
Well, Ted, this was 2 or 3 years ago, so ancient history, I guess, in modern times. But I want to play another video real quick, and then I'll get you to comment on all of them. This was just a couple of days ago. Now, the whole video is about 10 minutes. You really need to watch it.
I watched that, yeah.
But this is just a quick segment, and this is Josh, what is his last name?
Hawley,
the senator from Missouri, right? Right. And he's asking this lady who is a scientist, Ketanji Brown said, I'm not a scientist. This lady is a doctor. And this was in a Senate hearing 2 days ago. Let's play it and we'll talk about the whole thing when we come back.
Why don't we just start there? Dr. Verma, I wasn't sure I understood your answer to Senator Moody a moment ago. Do you think that men can get pregnant?
I hesitated there because I wasn't sure where the conversation was going or what the goal was. I mean, I do take care of patients with different identities. I take care of many women. I take care of people with different identities. And so that's where I paused. I think, I wasn't sure where you were going with that.
Well, the goal is just the truth. So can men get pregnant?
Again, the reason I paused there is I'm not really sure what the goal of the question is.
The goal is just to establish a biological reality. You just said a moment ago that science and evidence should control, not politics. Absolutely. So let's just test that proposition. Can men get pregnant?
I take care of people with many identities, but
can men get pregnant?
Many women that can get pregnant. I do take care of people that don't identify as women. That
can men get pregnant?
Again, as I'm saying,
let me just remind you what you testified to a moment ago. Science and evidence should control, not politics. So can men get pregnant? You're a doctor,
agree.
I think.
Science and evidence should guide medicine.
Do science and evidence tell us that men can get pregnant? Biological men, can they get pregnant?
I thought of this and I got to share it real quick.
Yes, no questions like this are
a lot of people may not know this, but beyond all of Ted's politics and how he was a great congressman, the man is a large animal vet, right? A large, not just puppy dogs and kitty cats, cows and all that. Ted, I can only picture you being out and a farmer, with his overalls on, sitting there going and talking to you about what the problem, and you're saying, well, I got to figure out whether this is a male bull, or a female bull, or steer, or whatever. I can imagine the guy just looking at you like that, but I had to say that, Ted. Go ahead and talk about this. It's just insane to me.
It's funny. I was palpating pregnancy checking cattle one time. And have you ever been around that?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're running cattle through there, and you've got about anywhere from a minute to 2 minutes to check a cow for pregnancy. Well, they had slipped a bull in there, and I'm pulling up tails, checking them, and I'm checking them, and it just becomes automatic. So I pick up this tail. It's a bull, and I didn't notice it. And I got my arm in there and I'm going around and I look around, all the cowboys are laughing. They said, well, is she pregnant or not, Doc? I says, I can't tell you.
And they're
And they
going,
all
this
started
guy's got a degree and we're
and I
paying.
pulled the tail up and I'm looking, I said, you son of a gun. And they all thought that was the funniest thing. But I knew at that point that male could not get pregnant. He could cause pregnancies, but he was not going to get pregnant himself.
Well, maybe Senator Hawley needs to bring you up next time to testify up there, because it's just amazing, these people.
You were asking, how did we get to this point? That was a Democrat witness that they brought in, an expert witness. And obviously they brought her in because she would answer exactly like they wanted her to, because they don't want a definitive answer. They want it kind of out there to where, well, maybe it could be. But when you have people like that come into a congressional hearing or Senate hearing that can't give you straight answers, this is how we got here, because the youth of America are going to see people like this. That person is going to be talking in biology classes, in history classes or political science classes, and they're going to give these BS answers that are not definitive. And so people think, well, yeah, I can see both sides of that. No, you can't. It's male or female, period. And there's some confusion in between some of those. And God bless those people. I mean, I hope they get the support that they need. But when it comes down to basics, John, this goes down to basics. And we get away from basics, you get confused.
Well, if this woman truly cannot, and she's a doctor, doesn't know that whether men can get pregnant or not, and all that, let alone a Supreme Court judge that we showed earlier, it really proves that idiocracy is here and certainly in our future, because these are supposed to be the best and the brightest. I mean,
I think there's a little questionable about that. Josh Hawley asks the proper question: can a biological male become pregnant? And for her to beat around that and saying, oh, well, you're just making it political. No, you're making it political. It's a yes or no answer. If she cannot answer that, I wished he would have said, you know what, we're going to go to your governing board, whatever profession you're in, and we're going to ask them to repeal your accreditation and take your credentials away, because obviously you missed something in your learning process.
Absolutely. Well, we're going
to have that's cause and effect. If you're that ignorant or that that political that you can't answer a basic question, you just shouldn't deserve to practice.
Yeah, well, we're going to have to end it on that note. We hope you enjoyed our show
already.
Time flies when you're having fun. We're going to have to end it on that. We hope you enjoyed the show as much as we've enjoyed bringing it to you. Have yourself a wonderful weekend. Take us out, Ted.
No, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Watch your water pipes. Stay comfortable. And when we come back Monday, coming back from Washington, D.C., there is a lot going on, as you might expect. Congress is moving along with their appropriation bills, but the big thing is Venezuela, China, and Greenland. I think those things warrant some discussions. We'll talk all about that on
Monday. We expect a full report, sir.
Absolutely. Y'all take care. Have a great weekend.
Peace out.
Bye.